All right, folks, welcome. Welcome to the inaugural BDG podcast. I'm Andre,
I'm Ian.
and this is our very first episode. We're going to do sort of a bit of an introduction here, just start talking about what we're here to do and sort of our background. This is basically going to be a comic book related podcast. We're going to talk a little bit today about our background with comics, when we got into comics, why we got into comics, but we're also going to talk about comic related stuff, some video game stuff. This is an overall nerd podcast, not really just strictly comic books. So we'll get into whatever. We'll kind of just let it flow. But we are going to have some sort of a structure as things go on. But for right now, we're just going to do sort of an introductory show.
Yeah.
So, I guess I'll start with how I got started with comics. I didn't start reading comics until probably about 2009. I had glanced at comics every once in a while in the store, but never really got into them, never really took the time to actually purchase any, because other than, well, Garfield, if you want to count, those books. I got the daily collections, but in 2009, I had a group of friends who were really into comics at the time, and they helped me get into it, and I started, it might have actually been 2008, somewhere around that time, and I started purchasing comics, mostly DC. They were DC fans. I still don't own any Marvel comics as of this day, which, I don't hate Marvel, and, I love Marvel, but DC storylines for me are a lot easier to follow, but we will talk about that later when we talk about getting into comics. For anybody interested, we're going to do a segment on that. But yeah, my history has been from then till, I guess it's 2016 now, so a couple years. I'm no expert. I haven't gone all the way back in time and read like Gold and Silver Age, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What about you, Ian?
So for me, it's one of those weird things. Like looking back at it, how there's always been kind of this connection to like the nerd and geek side of things. Growing up on like Batman the animated series, a lot of those sort of things. But what I can think of is it's one of the things that I was originally really attracted to was Calvin and Hobbes. When I was younger, a babysitter, I don't remember who it was, but when my parents dropped me off at their house, they had Calvin and Hobbes, and I would want to look at those and read those. So before nap and such, we looked at Calvin and Hobbes and read those. And then later on, I had picked up some Teen Titans and Sonic comics. And that was, well, the Teen Titans, original Teen Titans TV show was airing. But then I never really continued picking those up. But for me, comics really began with manga. And I started reading Naruto after watching the anime. So it was Naruto, then One Piece. And from there, I was like, you know what? I bet I can find some Batman comics and things like that. And at the time, I was living overseas, so for me, it was finding things online that I found. It turned out there was a comic store in the city. It was all. I lived in Turkey at the time. It was all Turkish, but picked up a few comics from there. Spider-Man and Batman were my two favorites, so I had the Batman Superman Public Enemies number.
Oh, that's great.
That
I
volume.
love that.
So I have that in Turkish, and then I had Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1 in Turkish. So those were really my two first volumes that I ever got.
Now, was that Ultimate Spider-Man before Miles Morales or after?
It was before. It was
okay.
like the first Ultimate Spider-Man that they had.
Oh, okay. So that's the series. I'm actually thinking about going back to read that, so I was curious.
Yeah. So that was the beginning for me, and it just went from there. Now I read anything and everything essentially. I mean, it's all good information. It's all great storytelling. But yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can't say that I have quite as big of a scope. I'm limited to mostly just Marvel and DC and some stuff from Image every now and again, maybe Dark Horse. I was more
Yeah.
into Dark Horse when they had Star Wars, but I
I mean,
still.
from Dark Horse, you have Hellboy, and that's a great series as well.
Oh, is
It doesn't come out on a regular basis like too often, but yeah. But yes, Hellboy is Dark Horse.
oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, Image Comics the past year and a half, 2 years has been doing great things, coming out with bunch of new series, really taking chances on a lot of different artists, and I think it's paying off. They're doing an interesting thing where, unlike Marvel and DC and some of these other companies, where they create a series and you consistently have chapters coming out each month, what Image Comics is doing is they are having what the issues that would make up the volume come out in the consecutive months, and then they take a break from the comic until that first volume comes out, and then they go back until the next volume comes out. So that gives room for other series to take a stab at it and see how it works, which I think is smart on their end.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Also, with Image Comics, the all the stories and such, the creators retain the rights to them. They don't transfer over to Image.
That's awesome, because that's really a big problem that you see with heroes going forward. Like if something happens to the characters or something happens to the parent company, the publisher.
Yeah. But I mean, then again, once, like, unfortunately, a lot of the creators, you really have to have, for Marvel and DC, these companies really have to own the characters, because if the rights stayed with the creators of it, you have so many of these characters that the creators have passed away, or they're no longer interested in it.
Right.
So because of that, we're able to see the continuation of these characters.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, really. I I mean, I want to start branching out a little bit, but I'm still trying to. I need to go to Marvel next. Marvel's my next step up.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, with both DC and Marvel, and this goes into getting into these comics, it's so intimidating trying to start anywhere in these companies. Realistically, you have so many people that look at it and go, I like the character of Batman, or I like the character of one of the popular ones right now, Deadpool.
right,
these
Deadpool's
people
awesome.
these people are going to look at it and they're going to go, where do I start?
I'm seeing a Deadpool trailer right now.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one of these things where they aren't going to know where to start, and because of that, um, it makes it very hard and intimidating.
It very much does. That was the hardest thing for me getting into comics, was trying to figure out a good launching point. I was recommended so much stuff, and thankfully, I started in the age of the internet, so I didn't have to worry too much about it. But I think over time, it became slightly more difficult to get into, because I was like, okay, I've got a few issues that I like, but then there are some storylines that I don't know. And it was actually a lot harder with Marvel, which is why I kind of benched Marvel, because I was really intimidated by, character origins there. And they hadn't done anything like DC did what was the New 52, which was they rebooted a lot of their comics and they made them into. They essentially retold their origin stories. So they made it more palatable for more modern audiences. Not everybody liked that, of course, because you had people who were like, well, my legacy of DC was awesome, and you just pulled down your pants and pooped on it. But
Yeah.
I wasn't one of those people because I came in new, so I was like, okay, well, this is going to work out really, really well. So I
And I
actually
mean,
liked
what
New
they did
52.
with New 52, it really wasn't them ignoring or getting rid of the stuff that these people had grown up on. It was them saying, we understand that you all like these characters. We understand that, but we also know that there are people who want to start reading these and don't have a way to get into it. And it was a way for them to also start making new stories. I mean, I've read some of the older Batman comics, and honestly, what Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo have done just blows so much of that out of the water. They've just done an amazing job, and you wouldn't have been able to do that unless they had created the New 52 and just said, "Hey, we're going for a whole new um, feel."
Right. No, I agree with that. I think that's very crucial because
Yeah,
every once in a while you have to relaunch in order to draw people back in. Because what happens is over time, like you're at issue 400, 500, and then people are like, oh my gosh, where do I start? 400, 500? What's the deal
yeah,
here? Where do I even begin? And especially now where you've got comic book TV shows and comic book movies on the rise, you have to think, okay, you've got all of these people who've never touched a comic book in their life. Where the heck are they going to start?
yeah.
And so
And I
New
mean,
52 makes sense because at that point, it wasn't that the storylines were hard to follow or that they were, you know, like they didn't make sense, but they just kind of wanted to reinvigorate them and kind of rework them for a modern age. Like, they took with Batman, for instance, they took Batman and they took some of the things that were in the old canon and brought them into the new canon, but then they established some new things. They made some tweaks, like the Jason Todd character, also known as Red Hood. His origin was tweaked a little bit, although it's pretty much the same as his original, with some slight differences.
yeah, it's
Stuff like
essentially
that.
the same, but you just don't have them going off the deep end and just totally going nuts. They created him into more of a character that they could do more things with.
Right.
And I think that was something fans were wanting anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Right, and that's something for me that I like the changes that they made because they gave him a symbol this time. He has a
Yeah.
bat symbol now, and like his new like the additions to his costume, like he beforehand it was just his jacket and then like Under Armour, but now it's like an actual bat themed thing.
Yes, it's incorporating him into the Bat family, which he was
Right.
really isolated before that. It was them saying, you know what, he is part of the Bat family, and we need to bring him in and use him more as
Exactly.
that sort of character.
Right, and they made his personality like a lot more lighthearted in some ways.
In some ways.
I think in the well, I was reading in both Batman and Robin Eternal, and then Red Hood and Arsenal, and his character in those is just like the interactions, at least between Roy Harper and the other members or the other Robins, for lack of a better term, is just hilarious at times. So
Yeah,
I thought that was different.
they have a much more of a sibling relationship.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of Marvel comics, they really haven't done that, and that's why um, they really need to work with some of these new series coming out, like Ultimate Spider-Man with Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen, or all new Ghost Rider and Nova. You have these characters that are reinventions of older characters that allows for a new audience to come in and not feel intimidated by even 50 chapters, because even 50 chapters is intimidating, because when you're looking at a volume that's $20 for 6 chapters, you're looking at a $200 investment there.
Right.
And so it's wise on their part to that they've gone in and said, hey, look, we're going to do new characters. Like with Nova, they brought in Sam Alexander, which was the older Nova's son.
Oh,
And
okay.
so you have a character that is also now more appealing to a younger generation that goes, it's not a person that's 25 to 30 years old. It's someone that's my age. It's someone that I can see myself in. And that's also the same with Spider-Man. It's the ultimate Spider-Man of Miles Morales. They've given someone that's a younger age, but also gone, you know what, here's someone for um, black people to look at, younger guys, black guys to go and say, there's someone that I can see myself in. There's someone I can identify with.
Right.
Spider Gwen is it's something that the girls can go, hey, there's a teenage girl that's doing this. It's someone that I can identify with. And I think that's something that Marvel Comics in the past year and a half, 2 years has done a lot better than DC is creating those characters that people can look at and just go, you know what? I identify with those characters because really the Marvel characters feel more like they could fit into our world. They're dealing with our everyday situations.
Well, also keep in mind the Marvel characters actually are, for all intents and purposes, in our world, although with
Yeah.
some slight distortions. Like, there's a clear difference between New York City and Gotham.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
like, and that was one contrast I never really thought of for a long time, but it's definitely true.
Oh, most definitely. But at the same time, you're still dealing with a superhero that, like, recently in Deadpool and Spider-Man #1, Deadpool takes Spider-Man to hell to fight a bad guy. Yeah, you don't
Wow.
have I mean, you don't have that. That's not realistic at all. And so you have these characters that I mean, all these things, it's nowhere near realistic, but you have characters that are dealing with actual daily life situations. DC Comics, even though it's Gotham or Central City or Metropolis, they really could do something where it's going, you know what, we're dealing with everyday life. That is more what DC has done with Gotham Academy, but still, even that is, here's the extreme supernatural.
Right.
The first few chapters were very much, here's what school life is, people dealing with school life and trying to make new friends. And then they just went from there and went, okay, we've established the characters we needed to, now here's all the other stuff. And really took stop doing all the things that, like Ultimate Comic Spider-Man deals with, where it's constantly you're reminded that Miles Morales is a normal kid who has normal problems. He wants to ask out the girl, but he's nervous.
Right.
Should he tell her his secret? Would it put her in danger?
Right. And I'll
Well,
admit, I went back and read the first volume of Ultimate Spider-Man with Miles Morales, and I ultimately wasn't impressed because it took so long for him to actually become Spider-Man. But
hmm
I think if I sat down and read it more, I might enjoy it. But I kind of flipped through it in the store, whereas my first time
yeah.
reading it, I was actually really drawn to it. I don't know. I might have to give it a second viewing, but I'm definitely hooked on that. And then there are comic titles that people are familiar with. Stuff like Star Wars has been relaunched by
Yeah.
Marvel, and it is just
And
fantastic.
and I mean, things like that are another great area for people to start because yeah, it's technically a certain volume. It's the first issue of a certain volume. That's the way Marvel does it now. Is they don't
Right.
say issue 500 or whatever. It's really volume soever issue number 1 or number 10 or whatever. So they're doing things in kind of their own like television season sort of settings.
Yeah, you have graphic novels slash trade paperbacks, which the only difference really is, from what I understand, trade paperbacks are just the soft covers, whereas the graphic novels are the hard. But my recommendation to anybody getting into comics is unless there's a number one that you really want and you're interested in the series, stick to graphic novels slash trade paperbacks, because ultimately, unless you want piles and piles and piles of single issues, I'd say get the graphic novels and trade paperbacks, because they collect entire story arcs and
Yeah.
parts of series, and overall it's a lot better than just buying individual single issues.
But I mean, at the same time, that is a good thing to do. But once someone gets it caught up, they're going to get to the point where they're going, I'm going to have to wait 6 months, 6 to 8 months for the new issue,
Right.
for the new volume to come out. And at that point, you're having to go, okay, do I want to get the that volume and wait, or do I want to get the singles? Or
Now,
for like
see,
me,
here's one
this
thing that I figured out. With this doesn't work for DC, but I did want to recommend this because you just made me think of it. With Marvel, you have Marvel Unlimited, which is, I
mhm,
believe, $10 a month, and that is unlimited access to, I believe, single issues, graphic novels, the whole shebang. So
yeah, all
on
their
that side,
stuff.
that helps you out a lot, and that is digital, which I would recommend digital because, again, you don't have to deal with the all the
Yeah,
storing up as many. My thing would be having so many books in my house.
yeah. And I mean, it's also looking at it as um, you also have to think, okay, um, you want to support a certain comic, well, then it might be a good thing to go out and get it. However, we're all aware that not everyone has a comic store nearby that they can go
Sadly,
to.
no.
So in those instances, digital is a great way to be able to read these comics. You have Comixology, you have the Marvel Online stuff, or whatever. I don't remember what it's called.
Marvel
I
Unlimited.
blanked. Yeah, and then you have other things like the website Humble Bundle that has games and things like that. They have book bundles, and they often have had things like stuff from Image Comics or Dynamite or Marvel. They've had comics in there where they put volumes, and it might be like $15, and you get anywhere between 10 to 30 volumes of a comic. It's a great value.
Right.
And it's just being aware of different places like that, or finding websites where you can read these comics. And if you just saying, if you search hard enough, they're out there that you can read them for free as well if you wanted to.
Right. Yeah, and even just a preview, because I know even you mentioned Comixology, they give
Yeah.
great previews for just
Yes,
different
yes
issues
and
and
no.
single issues. It's usually like a 3-page preview, which isn't
Yeah,
much, but
I just wish it was the first 3 pages, and I found that it often isn't.
that is true.
They may pull from like page 3 or 4.
Right.
So it's one of those things where I wish they would just do like the initial first 4 pages, because those first 4 pages are what's supposed to hook you.
Exactly. Yeah, I've noticed that as well, and I think they just take the parts that they think people will be most interested in and then go, "Oh, hey, we're gonna put those in. That'll work great." But
Yeah,
I don't think that that's always wise, especially when you're looking into different series. But now is a great time to get into comics more than ever, because again, we've got the comic book movies, comic book TV shows, and people are just curious about the origins of these characters. Yeah, you can go and look them up online, but their stories are just amazing. At least a good majority of them
if
are.
you're wanting to read origin stories, go to comicsology.com, because they often put out and say, okay, today we're doing the origin of whatever, and you can get these comics for $1 usually, or you might get a bundle of however many comics for a very small price. And they're oftentimes older comics, but they're giving you number ones, the first issues of series. They're giving you origin stories of characters that at times it may be harder to find other places. So, and yeah, Marvel Unlimited. Again, if you're wanting to read any of those Marvel stuff or find out about any of those characters, check that out.
Yeah, Marvel Unlimited is really good. Although I personally am not in a place where I can actually subscribe, but I'm
Yeah.
hoping to get to a place at some point, especially if I get more into Marvel. And again, great time to be a comic book fan. Lots of resources, lots of ways
Oh,
to
most
read
definitely.
comics, and lots of comics coming to life in the form of movies and television. So I mean, there's no excuse not to start reading comics now because it's fantastic. But I mean, just the world of comic books right now is so huge. I mean, just tonight we've got the premiere of Legends of Tomorrow. We've got
Yeah.
all these different TV shows, like you've got Arrow and Flash, and
I
then on
mean,
the
we've
Marvel
gotten to a
side,
point on the CW where we have a comic related TV show Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday now.
right, one more, and they could have almost half the week, if not the whole week.
Yeah, and I
So,
mean, I think one of these someday, I don't know which day it airs on, but you have iZombie, which is also a DC title. It's under the Vertigo series, but that is a DC title as well.
right, I actually forgot that that was Vertigo. I knew it was DC, but I keep forgetting that Vertigo is a DC property. But yeah, that is
Yeah,
true. I haven't watched it because it doesn't grab me necessarily, but it's
I
just
mean,
cool to see
it's
because
just it's a zombie detective show. That's what it is.
right, and zombies are the in thing now, and
Yeah, I
well,
mean zombies or vampires.
right, the Twilight series. Oh
Yeah,
boy. And you see, that's another thing I wanted to talk about is like there are some people who might say, "Oh, well, I want to get into comic books, but I don't like to read." It's like, have you read Twilight or Hunger Games? It's like you read those books before you go see the movies. It's like, why not read the comics before you go see the movies or after you see the movies? It's the same
yeah,
principle basically. So there's really no excuse not to read the comics, and you might not like them. They're not for everybody, but I could say for the both of us, we strongly recommend getting into them just because they open up
and
a world and they're really engaging the audience. Like a lot of people who haven't read comics don't understand how they work. They're like, don't the pictures ruin it? It's like, no, they don't ruin it. With a book you have to create more imagery in your head, yes, but the comics, it's like you're watching something. It's like watching a static TV show, like a still image TV show.
yeah. Um, and I mean, it really depends on what comics you're going to read. There are definitely comics that are very much um, based around the text.
Right.
Batman New 52, very much so. There's a lot of dialogue in that. Um, but you get into some of these other comics, and you're going to find that there really isn't all that much dialogue. If you read Spider-Man, Deadpool, you're not going to have a whole lot of dialogue, and the dialogue that is in there is for the most part is very humorous.
Right.
So it's just finding what you're wanting to read, because if you are wanting to read more, you can very easily find comics that are going to serve that purpose.
I
If
am
you're
so
just
happy
wanting
about that
to
series.
if you're just wanting to veg out, you can very easily go and do that as well with comics. There are plenty of comics that there's hardly any talking at all. It's just a bunch of action. You read a lot of pow, and if you're Spider-Man, you read a lot of thwips.
Yeah, because we all know
Things.
flip is a word. It's like, what is he saying? It's like, oh, he's not saying anything. It's
Yeah,
just a sound effect.
just like snicked is a word, which is a sound Wolverine's
Yeah,
claws
Wolverine's
make.
claws.
or or the other one, for me the three are thwip, snicked, and then bamf, and that's the sound that
Oh yeah, I forgot about
one
that
of
one.
one of the it's either the it's what you can call it, Nightcrawler, or they have like baby versions of they're just called bamfs. They're like baby Nightcrawlers from hell.
So basically, that's the teleporting sound.
Yeah, that's the teleporting sound.
Yeah.
So those are for me, those are the really main three that I think of as words.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's more, but
there's a ton of them, and I remember the old. Me and Ian used to watch the Batman
oh
series
yeah.
from
Well,
1966,
I
and
mean, like,
they put those in the show,
yeah,
which
the
was
PAL
awesome.
and the
Today that would be a little lame because you're like, well, that doesn't really transition well in real life. But keep in mind, they were trying to make a show based on the comics at the time, so they were trying to translate
yeah,
it to the screen. It was phenomenal for doing that. I love that series.
yeah, it was great.
It really was great. And I mean, I know people can complain. It's like, oh, Robin has short shorts and Batman's lighthearted. And I'm like, well, that's just it, is that is the definitive. It's maybe not the definitive Batman for people, but that is the quintessential starting point for Batman.
And also, people need to realize that Batman might not be what you see as Batman, but Batman has changed over the times. You've had Batman that's been a family man. You've had Batman that's been a loner that doesn't want anyone around. You've had Batman that's very much a more the detective. You've had a Batman that's been more of a brawler. You've had more of a gritty and darker Batman. You've
Right.
had lighter tones of Batman. So it's one of those things where if there's a version of Batman that you think would be good, it's out there somewhere. You just need to go and find it.
Yeah, and the original concept for Batman, he had 245s. Like, he was packing heat. So, I
Yeah.
mean, the Batman character was about, taking down bad guys at any cost. It wasn't really about one definitive set Batman, and that's the good thing about the character. Although I would say that for
I mean,
me,
the
the definitive
definitive things
Batman.
about the only thing that's definitive about Batman is that there's a man under a suit he has a cape and a cowl.
I think also
That
to his origin, where his parents are killed,
well, yeah,
is a
well,
staple.
that, but at the same time, yes and no, because you have Batman Beyond and you have Dick Grayson as Batman. You have a lot of different versions
True,
of
but if you
Batman.
if
It's
you're
not
if you're talking
just
strictly Bruce Wayne, then you're gonna
I'm
say, okay, once you attach the Bruce Wayne name to it, I
yeah.
feel like you have to have the parents' origin story. If you do
Oh,
any of the other
oh,
versions
most
of Batman,
certainly.
you don't necessarily have to have that. Like you said, Terry McGinnis with Batman Beyond, he has a different origin. He's sort of brought into it by Bruce. Then you have Dick Grayson, who sort of inherited it, and many other iterations of Batman that aren't Bruce Wayne. But when you go with Bruce Wayne, one thing that has always been consistent is his parents have been murdered. That inspired him to be a hero. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
people, I did want to bring this up, there's a lot of people who are just becoming Batman fans. And I cannot stress enough, if you want to truly call yourself a Batman fan, you should at least get into the comics, because the comics delve into so much more
Oh,
depth
most definitely.
than just the series.
Go
Because
and
one problem I have,
go and read New 52. That's all I can say is
oh yeah,
it's
Court of Owls.
you have some amazing literature. I'm not going to just call it comics at this point. It's literature.
Exactly.
The way Scott Snyder writes that series is phenomenal. Um, it's very, I mean, space it out. Don't try to read everything at once. Otherwise, you are going to get overwhelmed.
A lot of
There
people are
are
saying they don't like that series for
there
some reason,
there
which,
are tie-ins and things like that, but overall, it's a great introduction to Batman. It's very original stories, also great stories with the Joker in it too. And we know that everyone who likes Batman very much loves the Joker.
that was actually
And
one complaint I was hearing from people, was that they actually didn't like how they handled the Joker in that. But I think that's another thing, is that's entirely
eh,
subjective stuff. I
I
mean, I
mean,
personally
I can
like it
understand
because
that. I
I
mean,
understand it too, because I think it's a
if those people are coming from it after if disclaimer, if you are coming from it and wanting Heath Ledger type Joker, you will not be getting that.
right.
That is one thing that
The Heath
if
Ledger
that's what
Joker
if
is
that's what people were
specifically for that
wanting,
universe.
yeah, if that's what you're expecting out of Joker, you aren't going to be getting that. You're going to be getting a much more sadistic, very much more at times humorous Joker than Heath Ledger was.
A lot more dangerous Joker, I would argue, because I
This
mean,
Joker is very much you add a lot more, make Heath Ledger a lot more sadistic, and then you add the humor from Jack Nicholson's Joker and then give him a Macklemore haircut, that's kind of what the Joker you're going to get.
That's a great description. I love the addition of Macklemore haircut.
That's
That's
what he
great.
has.
Fair enough. At least he's not. Which I haven't seen the movie yet because it's not out yet. But the Suicide Squad version of Joker, I'm not satisfied with visually. Oh my gosh, I could rant
I,
about that
I
all day
I
long.
would I would be fine with it overall if they just wouldn't have tattooed his face, given him tattoos on the face. I would have been fine with it. I could have dealt with everything else. I don't mind tattoos on other parts of the body, but why do you go and tattoo damage right across his
And
forehead?
I saw the
That's
new
my
trailer. You
question.
can see that damaged tattoo if you pause
Oh,
the frame.
yeah. Yeah, you
And
can't. It's one of those things where I know we're going to see it throughout the movie and I'm certain it's going to be bugging me.
see,
But
here's the thing about that. We're talking about the Suicide Squad movie. The second trailer for this actually had a completely different tone than the first. The second trailer
oh,
was a lot
yeah.
more comical. I like the second trailer. I'm still on the fence as to whether or not I'll actually go see it, but
It
I just
depends if
the
I have
one
friends that
thing,
want to see it.
yeah, it just depends on what people are saying about when it comes out, and kind of what
Yeah.
the I have to read the synopsis because I'm the type of guy who spoilers don't affect me. I have to know what I'm getting into before I get into it because it's a completely
Yeah.
different experience for me. So spoilers aren't a big deal for me. But my thing about that trailer is the only major downside I could point out because the Harley Quinn character was great. I thought that it was fantastic to actually see her with some dialogue, but
Yeah.
and some of the other characters were pretty good as well. But the Joker just came across to me as one guy's attempt at something similar to a Heath Ledger. Like Heath Ledger has become that benchmark, and I don't know if I'm okay with that because I love that character, but for that universe, the Chris Nolan Batman universe, you're talking Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
I personally think that Joker should be confined to that, and that shouldn't be the standard going forward because the Joker of the comics and the Joker
No,
of
it
other
shouldn't.
continuity, that Joker is more or less he has more depth, whereas this Joker he's funny, he's calculated, but his personality is different throughout different types of media. And if you're just going to carry on one from another, and that's what I felt like from Jared Leto from what I saw from that trailer, was that he was just kind of doing his own take on the Heath Ledger thing, and I think that's a bad.
I I wish that they would have given here. I don't know. I'm trying not to. I'm really trying not to judge it. I'm trying not to. It's hard, but I'm
Oh, me
trying
too.
not to.
It's very,
Here,
very hard.
here's what I hope and I wish. I don't know if they did. I hope that they would have, and I don't think that they did. But I think it would have been great with this universe that they're building because this is a feeling I get. I wish they would have given him the new 52 stuff with the Joker in it and said, read this. And then I wish they would have given him Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns and
Oh yeah,
said, read this. And then they go, okay, now we want you to take the things that stood out to you about the Joker from those two versions and create your own.
right.
I think that would have been a perfect Joker for this universe that they're creating.
Oh, I agree. I agree. But this take from what I can see, and again, this is only the very, very little stuff, but they're already setting tone, which to me,
Yeah.
that's what is make or break of whether I'm interested or not. And to be honest, I'm just not interested in what I see of this Joker character. He just comes across as sort of he's not your grandpa's Joker, but I'm like, the Joker is 75 years old. And Christopher Nolan, the way that he did him differently was not so differently that it's straight away from everything. This is kind of like a Joker that was born in 1997 as opposed to whenever, I guess 75 years. I'm horrible at that. Whenever he would have been born at that time. But honestly, and I will give Jared Leto props because I know he's going to give it his all. But I just think that what they're trying to do, because I know the Suicide Squad is a lot different than the Suicide Squad in the comics. They've got a lot of characters that weren't
Yeah.
originally there. And keep in mind, Harley Quinn is for all intents and purposes, pretty much one of the newest DC characters because she was introduced in the Batman animated series back in the 90s.
Hmm.
So she's a fairly recent creation, and that was her origin doesn't lie in the comics. They added her in the comics afterwards, and she just exploded in popularity. I think she's going to steal the show for this movie.
Oh, so do I. I mean, I think that's going to be one of the main reasons why people go to see this movie is that we're getting essentially our first real um, live action Harley Quinn. There's been other fan made things, but we're getting our first real official DC live action Harley Quinn.
Yeah, I had a
And
friend
I
who
think
dressed
that,
up as Harley Quinn for Halloween. So I mean,
yeah, and I
they
mean,
already and from what I know, they don't read comics, so but they're familiar
no,
with the character somehow.
yeah,
And
and
then
and I mean, a lot of that, in my opinion, is one, growing up on Batman the animated series, but two,
just
it's
general
having
exposure.
it's that, and it's having things like Hot Topic,
Right.
where you have nerd and geek apparel, and they give us a character. They give a character that females go, okay, I like her design overall.
Right.
And I think that's where it comes. That's where it sprouts from. And you have enough people that have read the comics that they can go, okay, this is her type of character. This is how she acts. So these people then go, okay, have an idea of how she acts then and what sort of character she is. But they don't really understand the full um, context in how she fits in with the Joker and what sort of relationship they have.
Because
That they
here's
have.
an interesting thing. I don't know if they're gonna delve into her origin entirely. It looks like they'll take a few origins and maybe
It looked in the trailer. It looked like I saw stuff about um, their origin,
right. And I
about
couldn't
at
tell.
least hers.
I couldn't tell if the scene in the original trailer when Joker's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna kill you. I'm gonna just hurt you really, really bad." I couldn't tell if that was Harley or if that was gonna be someone else because they never actually really showed. It sort of looks
Oh
like it
yeah,
could be Harley, but I'm
I
sort of
don't think it
questioning it
is.
now based on the second trailer.
I don't think it is.
I don't either.
That's my
Because number
personal
one, I
opinion
would take a
because
problem with that
because
because
yeah, I
that is not the origin
there
of Harley Quinn.
they do have um they do have images from the set of Harley as Harleen Quinzel sitting in like a doctor's um like white outfit sort of thing across the table from Joker.
Yeah, they do
So
have
I
them.
think so I think we are going to get into the whole thing of how she becomes obsessed with him and she becomes then infatuated and he just
But
twists her mind.
I don't think he tortures her. That's the thing that a
No,
lot of
no,
people got from the first trailer, and
I don't think we're
I'm
doing
hoping they
I
stray away from
really
that because I will
yeah,
have a problem with that.
I would have a problem with
I
that
have a
as
problem with
well.
torture in general as scenes. That's one of my big turnoffs in movies is that even implied I can't like just doing that kind of harm to another human being just oh man. But besides that, it's like it wouldn't fit the character because the whole idea of Harley was that she became Harley Quinn because for those who don't know, we'll give a brief origin here. She was a psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum, and one of her patients was the Joker, and she started having sessions with him, and the Joker, being the crafty guy he is, sort of got to her head and got in her head, even though she was trying to get inside his head as a psychiatrist and heal him. He was trying to convey, his worldview, and he managed to successfully do that. And she became crazy over him, and she became more and more unhinged, and then she ultimately fell in love with him / became his sidekick. I think that's the best way
Yeah.
to sum it up.
Yeah.
So you've got somebody who originally was very sane and stable who became insane due to mostly love. So the moral of this story, kids, is don't fall in love with psychopaths
Yeah.
or don't fall in
And
love in general.
And I mean, also from the second trailer, one thing that also is really intriguing me that looks like I'm. I don't. They know that they really haven't given us the definitive villain of who's going to be in this. There's stuff that is implied that we're going to have stuff with Joker, but I don't think he's going to be the real villain of this
No,
movie.
they downplayed him. Like, you'd think if he was more central, they would have more
And
footage of him. I think
and
they're going
you
to use him
and you
sparingly.
no, yeah, I agree, and I think really with the stuff we're going to see a little. I think a lot of the main stuff we're going to see of Joker is in Harley Quinn's origin,
Right.
and then we're going to have some of the stuff afterwards. They may try to stop him, but if you look at that second trailer, it looks like there's some supernatural stuff going down. Some very not realistic. It's not realistic stuff. There's like this huge black cloud and ominous thing, and I think that therein lies, in my opinion, where we're going to get our villain.
Right.
And if I'm right, it's going to be so much better because we're going to have
Joker just wouldn't make sense as a villain to carry the Suicide Squad. He's
no,
big, but he's not big enough to be getting, Amanda Waller, and I don't know if it is
no,
Argus in
no.
this movie or not involved,
I
but
think it is.
it could be Argus.
Or
Okay.
something. It's something along that lines. I think because one thing that people pointed out is, um, I think it was in the first trailer, we see a military type base, and they were stating, someone stated that how Dick Grayson is with some sort of organization, and they're saying how Dick Grayson has the character who is or was a Robin has moved on. If we do get a Dick Grayson,
Yeah, and that also
because
ties into the Batman v Superman trailer, where you see a Robin
yes,
costume that was spray
well,
painted by Joker.
in my, if they are really going to follow the comics, that would be Jason Todd.
Yeah, and see, that's where I think that they're going to deviate a little bit. Is I don't know that they're going to bring him in that sense, but and I don't know. I have mixed feelings on that, but just to make a slight transition because it is a shared universe. What are your thoughts on? We're probably, let's see, about a month and a half out from Batman v Superman. Are you more wanting to see it? Are you less wanting to see it? Do you have any more concerns? Because I'll tell you this, they released a new TV spot, and they had the DC Comics Cinematic Universe special, which was after this week's Flash, which was hosted by Kevin Smith and Jeff Johns. Fantastic special. I don't know if it's online or not yet, but
I'll have to see if I can find it.
they had footage of Wonder Woman. They made an announcement that they are indeed going to do Green Lantern, which made me very, very excited, but they're doing Green Lantern Corps from what I understand, which is awesome.
That's awesome.
I was so, and for people who know me, I am a die-hard Green Lantern fan. When it comes to comic book stories, I'm the most excited to read Green Lantern, hands down. It's not that he's my favorite hero.
Speaking of Green Lantern, um, South Carolina Comic Con is just a short ways away, and I've been trying to figure out costumes. I am considering a Guy Gardner costume.
That'd be awesome.
That is one of the costumes I am considering because I think that would be a fun character to cosplay as.
Yeah, didn't you go as Red Hood last year?
2 years ago. Last year, I had a hard time I was going to again. Had some difficulties with putting some stuff together. Things didn't turn out how they were supposed to. Anyways, the second day I went as Ness instead, and
Yeah.
there's a good chance I'm going to do Ness again.
That's awesome. Now, see, Ian's the guy who's willing to go out there and cosplay. Trust me, people, you do not want to see me in costume. Like, it's not going to
He
happen.
really did. At first, I was like, "Oh, I should do spandex." I looked down at myself. I'm like, "No, no one wants to see that."
It's like, and trust me, I'm a big guy. It's like, and
we
one,
both
I'm not.
are.
Yeah, we both are. But I mean, I'm not really into costuming. But Ian is brave because he's willing to go out there in a costume in a world full of people who spend 5, 6, 700 more dollars on their costumes.
And here I've spent $20.
And he spent $20. I'm just the guy who walks in there maybe with a superhero T-shirt and a cap, and I'm just like, "Yo, what's up?"
Oh yeah. There's
But
also that. I mean, it's the best thing to remember is if you like doing it, guys, it doesn't matter what body shape or body type you
Right.
have. Do it. Do it for the fun of it.
Yeah, don't give in
And
to
no
don't give in
one's
to
going
society's like
no one's going
pressure.
to come up to you at a convention and say you're not the right body type for this. Someone might, off in the distance, someone might point or something like that. More likely than not, though, you're going to have someone come up and ask to take a picture with you. And
Yeah.
I will tell you what, that is an amazing feeling. That when I did my Red Hood costume was the most pathetic looking Red Hood costume ever. I mean, I made the helmet I made was decent. I will say that I'm very proud of that helmet.
Wasn't that the one that was like
It was an Iron Man
yeah,
mask that I used.
I did
Yeah,
recognize that. That was
and,
the one thing that threw me off about it. I'm like, I know what he's trying to do, but I can't unsee Iron Man. It's like I know
yeah,
that's Iron Man. I can't unsee that. It's like the illusion is shattered.
yeah. But at the same time, Red Hood's current helmet is very much Iron Man. It flips open in the front just like that.
Yeah, that is true.
The only thing is he really don't have a mouthpiece, and if I could have had better ventilation, I was going to take that out.
Yeah, they do make
But
Red Hood helmets. I found out, which I didn't
yeah,
realize.
but they're expensive, and I'm
Yeah,
not paying that money.
yeah, they are
But
expensive. They're admittedly a lot cheaper than I originally thought, but they're still pretty expensive.
yeah, but I mean, that first convention, I had several people come up to me and ask for to take my picture. I had someone dressed as a Joker that wanted to come up and pose with me, do the do the whole. He wanted me to put the toy gun I made to his head and such. And that's just one of those things where it's that really cool feeling. No matter how much work you put into it, whether you even bought the costume, just being able to do that and having someone come up to you and say, "Hey, I like your costume. I like what you're doing. Can I get a picture?" Get a picture at the same time with them. It's a keepsake. I mean, if there's a convention, just go to the convention for the fun of it and take pictures with people. You'll make someone's day. I guarantee it.
Right, and I haven't been to a convention yet for comics or even for games. I'm trying to work on both, but it's kind of hard to figure out the dynamics.
It's going to
But
happen eventually. We're going to go to one together at
yeah,
some
we're
point.
trying to figure all of that out
Yeah.
in between all the other stuff we're working on here. But yeah, the back to the Batman v Superman thing. I've said many times before, and I've mentioned this on the my BDG Comics Twitter pages. There's something about this movie that just doesn't make me like, oh my gosh, I have to be first in line to see it. I gotta shove that old dude out of the way that's first in line to go see this movie.
Yeah.
Not that I would do that anyway, because I'm not a jerk, but honestly, I have no desire to see it because I have a feeling I don't think it's going to be a terrible movie. At first, I was thinking it might be a terrible movie because there's a lot of stuff that I didn't like from the
Yeah.
trailer. But I'm thinking it's going to be like Man of Steel, where it split the audience down the middle, or like the Star Wars
Oh
Force
yeah.
Awakens, where it split the audience down the middle.
I
Honestly,
already know a ton of people that are not excited at all for it, and these are comic book fans. And I will say the one reason why most of these people that they were initially excited for are no longer excited for it is because of Doomsday.
right? And I was just thinking that's one of the pivotal. There's three problems with it for me. Number one is I don't have a problem with Ben Affleck being Batman. I think that it's cool that they're having somebody different, but the way that they're portraying the character just completely spits on the Batman thing. It's like he's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, and yet he can't figure out until probably midway through the movie that Superman is good, and they team up. That I take problems with because he blames Superman
Yeah.
for everything, and then you hear him say in the trailer, he's like, "I'm gonna kill him." I'm like, okay, that's not Batman. But then you've got Wonder Woman, who they're doing backwards, where they're going to introduce her here, and they're going to say, oh, don't worry, we'll show how she gets here in her own movie next year. And I'm like, what? I'm like, oh, come on. And then you have Lex Luthor and Doomsday. And I'm going to tie the two together because the movie ties them together. The movie says, according to the trailer, so I don't think this is necessarily spoilers unless you haven't seen the trailer, which if you haven't, what rock do you live under? The problem with Lex Luthor and Doomsday, start with Lex Luthor. I don't mind the fact that he has hair and red hair because they've proven that's actually a comic origin,
Yeah,
so they're honoring that. What I have a problem with is they cast Jesse Eisenberg, who I don't have any problems with, but he does not come across as Lex Luthor, and also his character in general is just more goofy. Now, I don't know if that was a comic origin or not either. Again, I've only been in this for a few years, so I couldn't tell you definitively, but I just take problems with the Lex Luthor that I've seen over the years, even before I got into comics. That's just
yeah.
not Lex Luthor to me. Another thing is the idea that he created, I almost said Deathstroke, Doomsday. That to me is,
I don't have a problem with that one as much because if you think about the origin of Doomsday, the origin of Doomsday came during the death of Superman. That's
right.
where the origin of Doomsday came from. And that was a guy who was just messing around with all these different genetic stuff and finally ended up creating Doomsday, who killed him and then plummeted to Earth and eventually killed air quotes Superman. Because spoilers, he comes back and he's not actually dead. He was in a coma, which essentially seemed like he was dead.
Yeah, that was the whole Death of Superman. As fantastic as that storyline was, it was purely a gimmick to get people back into comics, because I think at that time, if I remember the history correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks, if you find
By the
any other
way,
information.
just sent you check out this
You're
image.
getting some feedback from your mic
Sorry, is that
there. Oh,
better?
yeah, it's a little bit better. But
I just sent you an image. This is just based on the cast of Batman v Superman, and they paired it with the comics. Just look at the image I sent you on Facebook
okay.
because I'm about to post that to Instagram as well.
Yeah, the whole Batman v or the whole Death of Superman thing was a huge just gimmick. That's awesome. That's really
Right?
awesome. Now I know a lot of people had a problem with Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, but I'm like, how is she not Wonder Woman? It's like, what
Yeah,
again?
she
What rock do
looks
these
like
people live
Wonder.
under? She looks like the perfect Wonder Woman. I can't think of another actress that looks more like Wonder Woman. I'm sure people have like their own laundry lists of
Oh
women
yeah.
they'd like to see Wonder Woman, but honestly, I didn't even know who Gal Gadot was until this. And I
Hmm.
know people were saying, "Oh, she doesn't look like Wonder Woman." And then they put out this footage because at that DC comic special with Kev Smith and Jeff Johns, they talked about it and they showed footage from that new movie, and somebody ripped it to YouTube actually, so there's some of it up there, and they're actually pretty far along in production because they had some really cool stuff to shoot. Only thing that bothered me about Wonder Woman was it had a bit of an agenda behind it. It seemed very
Well, yeah, it's Wonder Woman. It's going to have an agenda behind it. It's going to be, and my assumption is that it's feminine, very feministic.
oh yeah, which
Yeah, and I'm not surprised.
I'm not either. I mean that's how they paint Wonder Woman now. Although you could argue that that was only for one phase of her run, and then it just kind of became, oh, well, she's here, she's one of the pillars. Which Wonder Woman is one of the three pillars of the Justice League, which is why they're putting her in this Batman v Superman movie. Her Batman and Superman are the leaders and founding members. Even in the DC Universe online game, if you're going to be a part of the Justice League, you report to those three.
Yeah.
So I don't take problems with that, but I take a problem with everything. The way they're handling this story seems backwards. The way they're handling the Justice League seems backwards. Is like, oh, we're going to use this Batman v Superman as a launching point. That's why we're calling it Dawn of Justice, and then we're going to do all the other movies afterwards. It could work, and financially, it's going to be a success no matter what comes out of my mouth. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I would rather them take the time, do a Batman story, and then do another Superman story, then do Batman v Superman, or do Wonder Woman, whatever. Save Batman v Superman till after they've done a Wonder Woman movie. Until they've done a movie for each of the three pillars, and then bring them all together for Batman v
Well,
Superman.
if you want to get into the pillars as well, you got to add Flash. Just saying.
That is true. Although I only say the three pillars because the way DC markets them, it's Batman,
Yeah,
Superman, Wonder Woman. But if you want to get technical, Flash is there as well, and
yeah.
Martian Manhunter. Well, he comes in
Well,
later, but he
the
becomes a. I should say
in general,
he becomes more of a pillar later on, but he's not
the in
necessarily a
gen
founding pillar.
yeah. But I mean, in almost every iteration, it's Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, and Flash. Those
Right.
are the four people that are constantly in the Justice League and are founding members of it. Usually there's a Green Lantern as well. And then after that, there's um, Aquaman's generally in it, and then it's usually either Martian Manhunter or Cyborg.
Even looking at this picture you sent me of the contrast between the actors and the comic characters, just looking straight at Gal Gadot, it's like she's almost a perfect match.
Oh, I know.
I don't understand all these people who are saying Gal Gadot's not going to make a great Wonder Woman. My world is ruined. I'm like, where's your sense of imagination? Seriously, this looks fantastic. I think that's the best quality about this new character. The only concern people have, which is, I think valid, is that she has sort of a accent like I don't know if she's Hispanic or if she's
Dude, whatever. That she's an Amazon. That
right.
if even if it was like somewhat Hispanic, so it's like,
This is true.
in my opinion, she's an Amazon. They're
She
of
doesn't need to
Greek.
sound like an
They're
American
of
like she did
Greek
in the old
descent.
TV series.
They could have get realistically if they wanted to make it like wanted to make it how she was supposed to be of like a demigod essentially, which would mean that's a Greek background. They could have made her Greek and she would have had a Greek accent. That would have been, but that would have really thrown people then.
Right.
So I mean,
I think it
yeah.
works, and it's something different. I mean, I'm trying to get the Americana Wonder Woman sort of out of my brain, but as long as they don't make her like they did in Justice League
I
War,
mean, in New
because oh my
52,
gosh,
she lives in England. Just saying.
this is true. But I think they're gonna put that into. She spends some time in England, I believe, in the new movie as well, because they show footage of her
Okay.
there. So I think they're gonna follow that to some
Yeah,
extent.
they are following a lot of New 52 stuff.
Oh, and I couldn't be happier about it because I think that that's the perfect place to start.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, I just hope, like I said, I hope they don't do like her
My ho-
personality like in Justice League War. Oh my gosh. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, dude. You know the one scene I'm talking about in that movie that just oh my gosh, the
Yeah.
the scene with the ice cream. Oh my gosh. I declare this ice cream to be delicious. She says something like that. Like
Yeah.
she's just like completely, and I get it. She's from Themyscira. At that
I
point,
mean,
they throw her into American society, but I'm like, oh my
they
gosh.
that was one thing that was I didn't think it was necessary from the movie, but they do have a similar scene in the comics, and they handled it a lot better in the comics, where it's just this where it's. I think that sort of thing's important. I don't think I honestly don't think we're going to see it because I think we're going to have a character that's already her presence in our world has already been established.
Right.
She's already a fake because I mean in the
At
trailer
least in Batman v Superman, her
in
character,
Batman v Superman her character her
she's been in the
other
world of man a
identity.
lot longer in
Yeah,
Batman v
she's been in
Superman.
the world a lot longer. Her other identity is established because you see her at the I don't know banquet or whatever you want to call it that Lex is holding.
Yeah, she looks like she's got some money.
No, yeah, I mean, well, she's princess, so I'm not
This
really
this
surprised
is
there.
this is true, but it's like who's heard of Themyscira?
No, yeah, who's heard of it? But she has gold that she can just be
all
like,
she all she
here.
has to do, all
She's
she
just
has to
like
do is
pulls out
produce
that
a.
gold plate and she's like, here, I want all the monies.
It's like where it's like it says here you're from Themyscira. Do you have any way to? Oh, look, a gold bar. Never mind. That's all she has to do is just produce a piece of gold and no questions asked.
Yeah.
That's basically it. But I mean, it does make sense. I always forget that she's a princess, and I just hope they do it right. I hope it's not, if they're gonna do the feminist route, which they might. I hope it's not in your face, and I hope it's not obnoxious to the point where it's like, because that's my problem with this modern movement. Not to get too political, but my problem is like,
And,
there's a difference
and
between wanting equality and just dominance. And what I don't want to see
yeah.
is like she just dominates everything. That was one of the problems that I had with the Force Awakens Star Wars movie. Was, spoiler alert if you haven't seen that, sort of. The
Just so you
main
know, if you
character,
haven't seen that, like skip ahead like 20, 30 seconds.
yeah, be sure to do that. Um, the main character Rey can do everything. In the
Yeah.
movie, she can do absolutely everything, and that to me came across as what? It's like, okay, I can get that she's incredibly skilled, but it's just unreasonable how skilled she is. Like, even if this was a guy, it wouldn't make sense. Because it's
Yeah.
just, you can do any character that can just suddenly do anything with no explanation is just, I don't know, I have a problem with that. So I hope I don't see any of that in Wonder Woman. I hope that's
Yeah.
that.
But I mean, the one other thing I hope I don't see is, from what I've heard, it's supposed to partially take place during World War II, some of it. And like that was her introduction, was during World War II, one of the fighter pilots landed in Themyscira. You have the whole pilot landing and whatever. And that's the introduction.
The
And
question
I
is,
really
will she be born of clay?
good good question. Or are we going to have other interesting conceptions?
Right.
um, but it's one of these things where, okay, if they do the World War II route, are they going to have her come in and help, like, stop World War II?
Right.
And I personally hope that that's not the case, where she comes in and
Right,
like
because at that point
there's
you're
some
messing with real world
there's
history.
some other character. Well, it's like, well, it's kind of like um in Captain America, the first Avenger, where you had Red Skull on the side of the Nazis and things like that. And I just really hope it's not something where, because it is Wonder Woman and she is related with the Greek gods and things like that. I hope it's not something where it's like Ares is the one who's on the side helping the Nazis or something like that. This is just like my mind just brainstorming. I really hope it's not that, though, where it's something where she has to go and stop Ares and stop the Nazis. I
Yeah.
don't want to see that again.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, they could take it, like I said, they could take it any direction. I've got
Yeah.
concerns about it, but I mean, I am happy that Wonder Woman's getting some attention because I got excited when they announced the NBC series and then it got canceled. So, I mean, think about it. It's been since the 70s since they've had a live action Wonder Woman. So this
Yeah.
is, if you don't count the failed NBC pilot, but it's just awesome to see her getting that attention, but I just hope they don't overly politicize it.
And Aquaman.
Yeah.
I mean that's my personal excitement. I have a deep love for Aquaman, so
I
I'm
have an
just
appreciation for Aquaman. I don't know if he's up there as my favorites, but I certainly, and we've talked about this multiple times before
yeah.
outside of the podcast, but Aquaman is seriously, like, he's the butt of every joke for people who don't know who the character is. And this is why
Yeah.
we encourage people to get into comics, because his character in the comics is no pushover. There's
No.
never been a time people look at Super Friends Aquaman and they think, and even Super Friends Aquaman isn't useless. I don't know where this Aquaman is useless thing came from. I'm like, what are you people talking about? He's got
Yeah.
super strength. He doesn't just talk to fish. He can breathe underwater.
He doesn't talk to fish.
And he doesn't talk to fish.
He controls them. There's a difference.
Exactly. It's mind control. It's animal abuse.
Exactly.
Basically.
PETA.
It's
Go
a lot
after
better.
him.
It's not talking to fish. It's animal abuse. It's control.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's
I mean,
animal slavery.
yeah, we don't have problems with that. It's fish. We eat fish.
Yep.
It's like, I love fish sticks. And
At the
Long John
cafe
Silver's.
I work at, we were cooking tilapia earlier. So yeah, we eat fish.
You know, they always say there's plenty of fish in the sea. So, anyways, all dark jokes aside, because we don't want to make you people think that we're actually insane, and we don't want PETA on our tail. But no, I'm excited for Aquaman. I just, again, I read a what somebody on Reddit claimed is a leaked script of Batman v Superman, and the way that it was outlined in that, and I don't know if this is 100% or not, but the way it was outlined in that, I didn't like the way he was introduced.
Yeah.
I didn't like
I
how
was
they handled that.
So, just so you guys know, this could be spoilers.
Potential
and
spoilers.
It could be potential spoilers, or it could be potential BS, and just someone's just like, "This is what I think, and I'm going to put it out there as a leaked script." What did it say?
It said basically that, and this actually involved Wonder Woman as well, but the reason Wonder Woman gets involved is because she's looking for other metahumans, and Lex Luthor is holding other metahumans captive, including Aquaman, which makes no sense, but she ends up freeing him from this facility of Lex's, and he ends up joining the Crusade, I think, towards the end. Like, he ends up coming back and saying, I want to be a part of whatever it is
So
you're
he's
doing.
very much a Superboy type character.
In a way, yes, but it's like somehow Lex Luthor managed to capture him.
Yeah. The only way that would make sense is if, I mean, but it doesn't be. Never mind. It wouldn't make sense because of the age they have Aquaman at and the age that Lex Luthor is at. Lex Luthor is much younger than Aquaman. I was going to say if he captured Aquaman when he was much younger, but no, that's not going to make sense. So also, how did he make it so that he could create a prison that Aquaman couldn't get out of?
Right.
Because
That
I
to me,
mean,
if this ends up coming to fruition in the movie, I will immediately have problems with the movie based on just that.
yeah.
A lot of the things in that, and I will share that.
The only thing I will say is, if they do that, I'm going to need them to explain it in that movie of how he was able to capture Aquaman. I don't want to have to wait till the Aquaman movie to find out how that happened.
Yeah, they did a lot of that with Star Wars, and I'm a bit
that,
worried about that. And I think they're going to
that's
do that with Wonder Woman, where they're going to have a lot of stuff unexplained for her, and they're going to be like,
with Wonder
don't
Woman,
you worry, it's going to be in the next Wonder Woman movie. And folks, keep in mind, this is purely based off of what I read on a leaked script on Reddit, which I will share with you, Ian, just to see your thoughts on it. But it's not confirmed at all. It's just something. But it made so much sense. All the elements in it made sense. I just didn't like the way things played out, but it made the most sense. It didn't look like a fan fiction. It looked like it was legitimate. So, but if it comes to fruition that way, there'd be a lot of holes, and I hope they're not going to be like Star Wars Force Awakens, which I'm giving Force Awakens a lot of crap. Don't get me wrong, I love that movie, but the holes are unavoidable, and I have to bring them up, and I'm hoping that this movie doesn't do that, where it's like, oh, don't worry, this thing pops up, but we'll explain it later for the sake of explaining it later. It's like, if you can explain it now...
Up and try to just brush it to the side. So, also, and just saying, you guys, the reason why we say we hope there aren't these problems is... we all know that Pixar movies do extremely well, and I'm just wanting to touch on storytelling right now quickly.
Okay.
One of the people who does writing for Pixar went on Twitter, did 22 posts, and it's now titled Pixar's 22 Rules of Storytelling. And one of the things that they say, and one of the things that they state in there is, coincidences are great for getting your heroes or characters into trouble or into problems, but it's cheating to use coincidences to get them out of it. That's what Star Wars The Force Awakens did, and that's what it sounds like Batman v Superman and these movies are lining up to be doing.
Honestly, it seems to be a new tactic that they're doing. It might not be incredibly new.
It's just something where we're saying we're hoping that they aren't just going to try to say, oh, coincidentally, Wonder Woman knew exactly where everything was, and there's no proof of how she knew where these things were. You understand that it's only an hour and a half to 2 hour movie, but still, when you have vital information like that,
that was actually one of the major concerns. like
It's
of
it very much is cheating
right,
to just go and say, okay, he did it because he can. This is why Batman, honestly, is such a popular character, because you have a character that is human and he has to figure everything out. So in the comics, they go through and they show him figuring out all the steps and figuring out everything of how he gets to the conclusions he does.
right,
He gets DNA, he runs DNA tests, he goes through and looks at photo evidence. He then goes and correlates and goes, okay, Joker was here. Joker was here. Okay, next we may see him here. And he figures out different areas and that Joker may be. And then he gets teams together and sends people out patrolling.
right.
So you don't just have Joker's here, Joker's here. I know exactly where Joker's going to be next. I have no clue how I figured this out, but he's going to be here. How
They
do
give
I
him
know?
depth.
Because of this piece of lipstick on this random piece of paper I found that has no meaning at all.
One of the things that somebody pointed out, and this is just kind of a side topic, but the uh, the past film iterations of Batman, the two that we've had so far, they have not delved into Batman's detective skills. And for those who read
Yeah.
the comics or have seen the animated series, they know that's a big part of his character. Even in the Batman 66 TV series, that is a huge quintessential part
Yeah.
of his character. So a lot of people are hoping that they go into it with this, and sadly, it doesn't look like they're going that direction because there's a lot of reasons why this conflict between Batman and Superman shouldn't happen if he is a master detective. And you can call that nitpicking, you can call that, oh, well, you know, that's not why Batman's popular, but arguably, that is quintessential to the character. And
Oh, very much so.
I
I
would
mean,
like to see it portrayed a lot more than it has been in the past, because while the Christopher Nolan Batman movies are great, that is the one element that was lacking. And then same with the, you know, the '90s Batmans,
yeah.
which only
And
one
I
of them was
mean,
decent.
there's there's a reason why Batman is more popular than a character like Iron Man or
Right,
Superman. It's because he's human. Everything that he has learned, everything that he does, is because he's learned. He knows multiple forms of kung fu, ninjutsu, all these different things. And then on top of that, he studied forensic science. He studied as a detective, all these different things, and that's what he uses to fight crime. That's what he uses to solve these things. That's why you have characters like the Riddler, someone who challenges Batman's mental
right,
capacities. You wouldn't be able to have a character like Riddler and put it into Superman's universe because it doesn't make sense. Superman's a very physical, just beat the crap out of somebody type character.
right. There's a contrast
So
between him and Batman, and that's, you
yeah,
know, they
and
need to showcase that in this movie. But the thing that worries me is that they're showing them both as just equally brutish, and they equally have the same problem with each other, which just
well,
doesn't fit for
I
their characters.
I think that this movie in particular, I I don't think it'll be something where I think to some extent we may see some detective skills, but I don't think it's the way it in any of the situations where it's Batman against Superman. It's never been anything, even in the comics. It's never been something where he's had to use his detective skills. It's been him walking through the sewers, and Batman and Superman comes crashing through under Poison Ivy's control or something,
Right.
like in Hush, or and there's other situations where it's Superman being controlled by the government. In all these situations, it's Superman being controlled by something. So
Right.
part of me does hope that it's something like that, where
Superman
it's
has almost never actively, outside of mind control or an
be,
agenda, wanted to fight Batman. Now, you
yeah,
can
or
argue
be
with Frank
controlled.
Miller's Dark Knight Returns that Batman has wanted to fight Superman, but even that is a little, you know,
No,
back and forth.
even that one, Frank Miller, you can tell he's not fond of Superman, but he doesn't actually paint. If you actually go back and look at it, he doesn't paint Superman in a really
Superman
bad
shows restraint in
light.
that fight. Even if you watch the movie,
Yeah.
which I think is a deviation from the comics slightly, as they tend to do. We're talking about the
Well,
Dark Knight,
yeah.
right? Dark Knight Returns, part one and part two. Even then, you see Superman showing restraint and the whole time being like, I don't want to have to fight you. I consider you a friend. Like, he wouldn't
Yeah.
kill Bruce, but Bruce wanted and made it clear that he wanted to know that he is the person that could keep Clark Kent, Superman, in check.
Yeah, and the main thing in those series, even those, you do have Batman using his detective skills, even though it's not seen prominently on display, because you have, and I think it was in the Dark Knight Ascends, the second one, you have Superman state Batman was right that about what the government was doing. He states Batman was right. He saw all this coming. So you have those sort of detective skills, even though because because it's in the past, that far in the past, they don't need to go into explaining how he knew all this, how he knew it was coming,
Right.
because he didn't. He wasn't able to stop it. It's already there. It's happened. It's upon them. So it's just Superman going, you know what? We should have listened to Batman. He was right. And
Right.
so you still have a character of Superman that was, um, he realized after the fact that he was being used, that
Right.
Batman wasn't the person in the wrong that he was.
Exactly.
You get to that in later points, and so with that, I think it from the trailer, it seems like we're going to have very much that same sort of thing where Superman very much is an agent of the state, where the White House is going to call him up and say, "Hey, you need to go do this. We need help here. We need help there," and he has to go do it, and it's part of his atonement for what happened in Metropolis.
Right. He's trying to essentially make up for all of the collateral damage and things people complained about in Man of Steel, which
Yeah,
I wouldn't say, based on that leak script, I wouldn't go so far as to say he's a puppet of the government, but from what I understand, it looks like he takes umbrage with Batman for the way that he does his vigilante style of justice, which in this movie it seems very dark and it seems very Dark Knight Rises esque, but that's just me kind of.
well, yeah, I mean that you have very much. It felt like a Sons of Batman sort of feel, where you have a guy where the police find him and he's had a bat branded to
I was
him.
gonna say the bat branding thing that actually really kind of bothered me because I'm like, that's, I know Batman's a dark character, but that's dark on a level that, oh, I don't know.
Now the difference would be is if that guy did it to himself. Because if you think about it, in Batman: The Dark Knight Returns and Ascends and the Master Race and those, you have the Sons of Batman and they have bats on their faces and they're blue. Now,
Right.
however, it's never specified if those are tattoos or if they went and it's marker, or if they went and actually if it's like a branding, because it could very much be
Or it could
that you
just be
have,
face paint.
yeah, you could have very much something where it's these people who are going bat, because it did state that Batman, this is a Batman that's been away for a long while, and he's coming back into it. So you could very much have that Sons of Batman thing where people have branded themselves and are running around and going, "We're doing Batman's work," and the beginning of this movie is him stopping them and trying to get the city back in order.
Right. Now back to cheating and storytelling. I'm trying to think where I was. I had a point to add to that, and I'm just blanking on it. But I think what I was trying to say was, you know, the thing that bothers me about what they're doing is number one, it feels like a new thing to sort of rush movies because we saw it a lot in The Force Awakens. So spoiler alert, if you're going into Force Awakens, you might see a lot of that. But one of the things I have a problem with is if you have a span of 1 to 2 hours to tell a movie, it's like, why not build the movie around those 1 to 2 hours instead of trying to cram in as much as possible to get you excited
Yeah.
about the next movie? If I like the movie to begin with, like if I like The Force Awakens to begin with, I'm
You're
going to
gonna
be
go see
excited
the
to go
next
the
one.
next one regardless.
Yeah.
Exactly. So why would they do that with Batman v Superman is beyond me, but I have this horrible feeling based on all the things in the trailer and these leaked scripts and sort of the whispers going around that that's kind of what they're going to do with the whole Wonder Woman thing, if not with Aquaman or both. And I'm just like, even with Batman, I'm like, why couldn't he have
I
had his own standalone
I
movie?
mean, I'm just hoping that the way it's set up is the first 30 minutes is Superman running around saving people, Batman going in and reclaiming his city the from whoever it is running amok, and then it's them meeting and facing off for the next 20 minutes. And during this whole time period, we're getting glimpses of what Lex Luthor's doing.
Right.
And then eventually you have Doomsday come out, and it starts out as a big, at whether it's in Gotham or Metropolis, he comes out, and it's probably going to be, well, Batman and Superman are fighting, in all honesty. That's probably what it's going to be. They're fighting, and he comes out, and they go, oh crap, we have to team up to stop this guy, because if this guy, otherwise, this guy is going to destroy both our cities, and we're not going to have any home left or anyone left to save.
Right.
And then they're getting the crap beat out of them. And of course, Wonder Woman comes in, and since she's a demigod with all these things built by Hephaestus, she's going to be able to knock the crap out of what you can call it, Doomsday.
I think
And
a
now
lot of people have
someone
problems with Doomsday because they're like,
now
it's too
now
early.
someone did. I love what someone did. I don't remember who I was talking to. Someone mentioned about Doomsday. His current design is lacking. Yes, but
Very much so.
if you think about it, Doomsday, when he first appeared in the comics, wasn't amazing either. And over time, as he fed on radiation and all these different things, that's when he grew and turned into this really fierce, evil-looking creature. And someone was, I don't recall who it was, but they're saying, you know what? Potentially by the end of this movie, you could have a Doomsday that's just super bulked out and actually looks like the Doomsday we're used to.
And a lot of people are also saying that the fact that Doomsday can reincarnate after each death will lead up to a Death of Superman story where he's just ridiculously powerful, and they go
Yeah,
into that.
or we even better than that. What if we ended up with a Superman Doom,
Hmm.
where Superman kills Doomsday, but the pores in Doomsday infect Superman, and Superman slowly is becoming Doomsday himself.
I see. I'm not familiar with that storyline, but now you've got me interested. I'm gonna have to go digging for that.
That's a New 52 storyline.
Oh, okay. That's probably why. Because man, I've really fallen
Superman,
off the bus with New
it's
52.
that one is Superman Doomed, and you actually do have him where he ends up fighting the Red Lanterns, and he fights
Ooh, now I'm really interested.
what you call it, um, the cyborg Superman.
Steel.
Yeah, I think so. Wait, no, not Steel. Not because Steel's a black guy, isn't he?
Yeah, with like a cyborg
No,
Superman
it's not.
suit.
It's not that. It's the one that is like the Superman that was like the genetic reproduction of him
Oh, okay. Yeah.
that has kind of like the cyborg face that works with Brainiac.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he
I'm
fights with
vaguely
him.
familiar.
He fights with him as well. But yeah, you have that whole thing where they all have to where they all fight and such, and Batman and Wonder Woman and those guys end up having to help bring him into himself. He actually ends up because of that he and what he was in him. I'm going to use the word hulking out because that most adequately describes it because of
Yeah,
Bruce
pretty
Banner.
much.
Because of him hulking out, he ends up destroying the large portion of what you can call it, where he grew up. I don't remember what it's called.
Smallville?
Yeah, he destroys part of Smallville. Like Lana Lang's family's like really injured and things like that.
Wow, that's dark.
And all these people are in an area where it's, and I think it is Steel though. That's the one that ends up going. Lana and Steel find a ship and start going after Superman to try to cure him.
Oh, okay. See, that's a cool storyline right there. See, this kids, this is why you need to read the comics, because you get stuff like this. That's awesome. Now,
Yeah,
is this a Superman main storyline, or is this Action Comics?
It was a thing where it's one of those things where the event went through all the different things.
Oh, so it was like a combination.
Yeah, I mean you had the prelude to Superman Doomed, and then Superman Doomed was its own issue. It was Superman Doomed issue number 1, and then you had the other stuff with Superman Doomed in it, and all the other like Action Comics and things like that, because they all take place at the same time. They're just covering different aspects of Superman's life.
Oh, okay.
And so it covers all those different things, and it goes through Wonder Woman, because before that you had Superman, Wonder Woman, power couple, and those sort of things.
Yeah.
So it goes through and covers those as well.
Makes sense. All right, well, I think we should get ready to sort of wrap it up
Yeah.
here. But before I do, are we still not caring about the Supergirl series? Because I'm not. I have no
I have yet to watch it.
The only thing that grabbed my attention was one scene I saw where they introduced Martian Manhunter, but that's not enough for me to say I'm on board with this series. It was cool.
Now,
it was a cool introduction to him, but I was like,
at some point I may do what I plan to do with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's find a watch skip guide and just skip all the like filler, unneeded episodes.
Yeah, I just have no vested interest in Supergirl whatsoever. Great character, Kara Zor-El,
Yeah.
but I don't care for this portrayal. It's not for me. I'm not the target demographic for that show. If I am, there's a problem. Because it doesn't reflect me at all. But anyways, I think we're going to wrap up this first episode here. Thank you all for listening. It's been really great talking comics, giving you just a brief introduction, what we're about, and having us blab and talk over each other and all the stuff that you hear in podcasts. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to include some links in the description to all of our various stuff. Both me and Ian are on Twitter. I'm on Twitter @ BDG Comics, and he's on Twitter at @artful_thinking, is it?
Yep, it's the same as Instagram as well.
And we're also going to share, or I'm going to share at least on the BDG Comics YouTube page, I'm going to share a link to Nerdworks, which if you're watching this on YouTube, you see a Nerdworks production. That's me and Ian's sort of branding. That's what we make our own comic series on. That's currently based on Facebook, so you can go and check that out. But any final thoughts, Ian? Any closing words?
The only thing I would say is, if any of you guys want to hear anything in particular, hear us talk about anything, or want us to read any comics and discuss them, let us know either on YouTube.
Absolutely.
Or shoot us a message on Twitter or Facebook, and let us know, and we'll do our best to talk about those things that you guys want to hear us talk about.
Yep. All right, folks. Well, thank you very much for listening to the very first BDG Comics podcast. There are going to be plenty more to come. Thanks for tuning in and putting up with our babbling nonsense, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
See you later.